Okay, so to draw the Machinist Fixture clamp on page 195, I'm going to start with, we change our model, our workspace to 3D modeling. Got that? Everybody okay with that? Okay, it may have changed your background and stuff too a little bit, but I also go to view and I turn off the view cube in the navigation bar. Those kind of get in the way in my opinion. So I go ahead and turn those off in the view ribbon, go back home. And I'm going to start on the very left where it says box, and under that there's some options. There are some options, and one of them is cylinder. So I'm going to use cylinder here. And I'm just going to draw a cylinder. So I'm going to, it's just like a circle, right? It asks for a center, and it gives you a 3-point, 2-point circle, tangent, tangent radius, or an elliptical even. Anyway, I'm just going to click somewhere and set the, well, it's asking for the radius, right? But I don't really know the radius, but I do know the diameter, right? So D space, and then I'll type in 1.25 for that diameter. But I'm not done, right? That was just a circle. In this case, I need to specify the height, which is 1.75. So I just type that in, 1.75 for the height. And there's our lovely cylinder. In the top view, it just looks like a circle, right? Well, let's look at some other views. What do you think it'll look like in the front view? Looks like two rectangles, right? Well, why do I have two rectangles here? So instead of panning and zooming, we have to add one more, well, in addition to zooming and panning, we're going to add another one, and that's called orbiting or arc rotating, or what do you call it? Pivoting the camera. So your view of it is front, but I'm going to hold, this is how you do it. You hold the shift key down and you pan. So you know how to pan, you just click your middle mouse wheel. So this time hold the shift key and move your middle mouse wheel. And that's why I saw the two rectangles. It's because it's showing the wireframe of the cylinder as just lines, right? Well, maybe I don't like that wireframe, right? So we can change in the, there's a view section of the ribbon. And let's change it to like, a good one is conceptual. I don't like the black background, but this just shows you a solid cylinder as a, go back to 2D wireframe. 2D wireframe doesn't ask as much from the computer. So I usually leave it in that unless I need it for something else. Was there a question? The what? Yeah, do you see? Okay, you're in the 3D modeling workspace, I take it? Yes. Okay, so see where it says view? So you have this, you have different areas of the ribbon, modeling, mesh, solid editing, modify, section, view, and you pull down that 2D wireframe. You have all these other kinds of views, right? Shades of gray. What else? X-ray, where's the X-ray? X-ray, there it is. So you can kind of see through it. Like if there are other objects and stuff in the scene there, you could see through it. This is just normal shaded with some highlighting, like a light source on it. Kind of hard to see in my opinion. I like conceptual. Hidden's good too, but it's kind of, anyway, 2D wireframe. There's also a 3D wireframe, I think. Yeah, wireframe, which doesn't tell you much. Anyway, it's actually kind of a big difference there, but okay, well, this isn't the clamp base yet. So I need another cylinder at the bottom of this thing, and I'm going to leave it in this view. And here, I'll show you why. I need another cylinder that, how big's that other cylinder? The cylinder just below this one. Do you see where it says diameter of 0.875? Okay. So let's start with that. And I don't know the height. Oh, yeah, let's not just ignore that. How tall is this cylinder?
2.50.
Well, yeah, from the top of this, right? But from the bottom of this, what's left, right? Because I already drew this thing at 1.75, right? So
1.25.
yeah, so it'd be the difference, right? So I'm counting 0.75 as the difference between 2.5 and 1.75, right? Yeah. Good. Okay, let's start another cylinder then. You can just hit the space bar or whatever. Well, maybe not since I did some other stuff. So I'm gonna just put my cursor over the center mark, right? This bottom center. I'll click there and oh no. You see how it's aligned with some other viewport? So hit escape. Let's go back to the top view here. And now I'm going to shift rotate. Okay, zoom out. Okay, now try a cylinder. And see how it's laying down now? Because it kind of, did that work? See, now it's the circle is parallel to the other side of the. Did that work? Yeah, it worked. Okay, and again, I need to type in D for diameter and type in my 0.875. And then I can move my cursor down and type in the distance, the height. So there it goes. But I'm not quite done with this because it has a hole drilled through it, right? This thing's hollow in the middle. And it has a diameter, the hole diameter is 0.625. So how do you do that, right? Well, you see the part of the ribbon that says solid editing? It's got a lot of stuff in it. It has like this mirror tool or separate tool or whatever those things are. Never use them hardly, but it does have 3 tools on the left that I use a lot. One is union, and that combines objects into one piece. And I'm going to use that right now, actually. So I'm going to click on this union tool. See, I want to put these 2 cylinders as one, right? So you just click it, and then click the cylinders. Click them both and hit enter or space. And now when I pass my cursor over it, you can see it's one solid object, right? Instead of a cylinder, it's a 3D solid. Okay, that's good because I'm going to draw another cylinder centered at the top, right? And it's going to have a diameter of 0.625. And I'm going to draw it all the way through. I'm going to draw it longer than the bottom of it so I can kind of see what's going on. So I don't need to type in a number. I just drag it past. So it's, this thing's like, you can edit cylinders and stuff too. This thing's 3.59 inches tall downwards, right? But I don't care because I'm going to use the solid subtract tool to subtract the inner cylinder from the outer one. Now I want to show how to use the solid subtract tool. So I'm going to subtract basically this 5/8 inch diameter cylinder. I'm going to subtract it from the outer shell of this thing, right? So I'm going to choose, unlike a lot of the AutoCAD tools that use the noun verb thing first, this always has to be verb noun for some reason. So anyway, I pick the verb, meaning the solid subtract tool, which is in the middle of the left 3 items. And so I'm going to subtract. The middle one from the outer one. So I have to pick the outer one first. So it's kind of like a subtraction sentence, right? 7 minus 5 instead of 5 minus 7, right? So you pick the big object first so you don't get a negative something. Get antimatter, and then the whole thing will blow up, right? Isn't that okay? Anyway, so I pick the outer object and hit space. And then it says, it just says subtract select objects. Well, after you hit enter saying that you've picked the objects you want to subtract from, you pick the subtracting object, and that would be the 0.65 inch diameter cylinder from the center, and then hit space. And then you should see the length of it be chopped to the height of this thing. And it's very unsatisfying until you turn it on like conceptual or something, and then orbit around it so you can see through it. So we got this hole going through the thing. Looks just fancy as can be, right? Did it work? Looks like it. On to the next part, the clamp head. And that's another, you know, you can think of that as like a very complicated object or not, I guess. But in this one, I see a tab on it, right? The clamping part and then the cylindrical part to it. So I see that as two objects that are joined together, right? Because we have that solid union tool that could do that. And then we could also punch a hole in it. So let's do that. So another cylinder is in order, and I kind of want it lined up with this one. So I'm going to turn this thing off, turn off that conceptual view. And so another cylinder, and this one is 1.375 in diameter on the outside, right? I'm not worried about the hole right now. I'm just the outside diameter, and the height of it is 0.5. You good with all that? Those two numbers? So start a cylinder. And I'm going to snap to the center, and D for diameter, 1.375. So it's a little bit bigger than the other one. And I'm going to go up 0.5. There. So far, so good. Okay. Now, I need to draw the clamping part, the tab that actually clamps the fixture or whatever it's clamping on. So I'm going to change my view to like the front view. So I see the cylinders as rectangles, basically, and then I could draw the shape of this thing that has a rounded end. And place it on the top of, or next to this top cylinder, right? So let's get a feel for that. Right now I have now I'm gonna draw this in 2 dimensions first, just to be able to draw it, right? So it's just a rectangle that's rounded on one end, right? That's how I see it. So how about, like, look at how far it is. It looks like from the center of the cylinder to the center of the rounded end, so 1.875, right? So what if I start with a circle there, and then I could look at positioning it later, but I'm just going to draw a circle here. So C, space. Now, because I'm in the front view, a circle is going to just look like a circle here, right? And if I pivot around, it's oriented as such in my 3D space here, right? So not a problem, not a problem. So when I draw a circle here, it's actually oriented the way I think I want it to be oriented. So I'm going to see space, and I'm going to snap. I'm going to track from the quadrant, which is fine. I'm going to track left of the quadrant and go 1.875. And then how big's the edge of the circle here? Looks like it has a radius of 0.1875, so 0.1875. 3/16, right? Okay, now its center is lined with the top of this thing. So now I just got to move it down to its, I don't know, well, 0.25 it looks like. It looks like it's centered on that thing. So that's, so if I move this downwards 0.25, I think that's centered on that cylinder. Vertically centered. Yeah. Okay. It's almost all I need. All I need now is a line snapped from the quadrant. Just kind of draw it over here. I don't really want to mess with any snapping. This, what is that? 0.18, no, twice of that, right? So 3/8, 0.375. And then come back to the circle. So 3 lines, right? And I didn't specify how long these are. They just kind of went into the cylinder. Far enough, I guess. So I'm trying to draw the side view, or really the front view, I guess, of this rounded rectangular shape, right? Then I'll trim off the inside of that circle, and then I'll have that shape that I want. So trim, click it, there we go. I'm not worried about the cylinder because it's like not even part of it, really. See how it's just kind of out there? I'll leave it in this view. Something like this would work. So there's another tool called Extrude, and it's actually a very common tool, and it's creating, in fact, all these tools allow you to generate 3-dimensional surfaces or solids from 2-dimensional objects. But before I do that, I want to select the circle, well, the half circle, and the 3 lines, and I'm going to join them together. So select them all, and then J, space, right? So J for join and space. So now it's all one object, right? It's considered, this is what AutoCAD calls a polyline. A polyline is a special kind of line, one that can contain multiple lines, hence the term poly. It has some other properties too, but the nice thing about it is I can select it and extrude it, right? I don't know if it's in the right place yet. It doesn't look like it, but I'll get there, maybe. So I'm gonna extrude it and see what the extrude does. Now, if I hadn't joined those lines, I'll show you, I'll explode this, X, and then I'll select all these lines and I'll try to extrude them this way. Extrude, and see how it comes out like a mesh? That's not what I want. It's not gonna join well, and it's makes it more difficult. So yes, I need to join. It won't union with other solid objects the way I want it. So join, and then extrude it. And how wide is this thing anyway? Taking a look at it, it's not quite centered correctly, but it is in the right place in the X direction, right? I can tell, see your cursor? Your cursor is red for the X direction. It's blue for the Z direction, is green for the Y direction. So RGB, XYZ, as they say. But the Z is laying down. So we used to have Z going straight up. So what's up with that? Well, actually, there's something called a dynamic I don't even remember what they call it. I think it's over here somewhere. Dynamic UCS, that's what it is. And that's actually this guy right here. You can turn that off, but what it does is, well, it says what it does. It snaps the axes, right? It snaps your direction, your X, Y, and Z axis to whatever you hover over, right? So if I wanted to draw like a cylinder on the side of this, I can see how it's hovering over it. I click on it, and it draws that cylinder lined up with the side of this thing. Okay. But if I wanted to draw a cylinder on the top, I could hover over the top here, and now it's drawing it this way. See how it kind of dynamically sees whatever surface you're hovering over. And so that can be useful, but it also could be a real big pain. Okay, so let's look at the top view here. This might be easier to see what's going on. So how much do I need to move this over to get it centered on that circle? Well, it looks like it's lined up with the end of the circle. So, there. Well, how big is that circle on the outside? 1.375 all the way across. So that's 1 3/8 or 11/8. So half of that is 11/16. So what if I move this thing over well, not even half of 11/16. This would be up the difference between 11/16 and 0.44, which would be half the 0.88. I guess mathematically you could do it that way. I could use snapping. That's also quite useful. Let's see if we can make the snaps happen. I do need to put it into a 3D viewport here. So if I zoom in on this edge, so if I select this thing, I can snap to midpoints, right? So if I just use the move tool, let's see if I can make this work. M space, and there's my center, right? So if I click on it and I move it in the Y direction or whatever in this direction, and if I line that up and track, it's not going to let me. I'm going to have to use math. Maybe from the center. Allow me to track from the center. No. Okay. So I'm just going to take, okay, so it's 0.44 inches to the center of this rectangular piece, right? And it needs to be, well, that center is 0.44, and it needs to be 11/16. So let's just look at the numbers here and just get it right. Where's my calculator? All right, so what's 11 divided by 16? 0.68. And so I'm just going to subtract half of 0.88. So 0.2475. How about that? So now I can just select it, and I'll just use the move tool, and I'll just click outside. I'll just get away from the object, maybe just not even see it. Well, I probably do want to see it, but I'll just click, and I'll just move in the Y direction, 0.2475. There, go back to the top view. It looks like I did it right, but top view will help. See, looks perfect. That was easier. So in 3 dimensions, it's a little trickier to move stuff around than in just 2D. But you still have snaps that you can work with. We could also have drawn a line, a construction line. Let's try that. You want to try that? Let me undo here. There we go. Back to where I had it before. Let's just draw a line from quadrant to quadrant, just so I have a nice, there. So that line is actually, well, it's not intersecting that edge at all. that's not going to help me much. Yeah, mathematically, it's just easier to move it. Okay. Good enough. All right. So these two pieces need to have a hole through them. So I'm going to join them just like I did before. I'm going to union these two pieces and then cut a hole in it. But I'm going to draw the hole first. So cylinder across the top. I think it snapped to the wrong place. Zoom in. Cylinder. Yeah, with that dynamic UCS, it's harder to get those snaps working too. How big is the hole in there? That's also half of in diameter, yes. Okay, and then I'll punch it through. Okay, so now I have all three pieces that I need. These two pieces are going to be union. So I'm going to use the union tool, solid union, and just select the two objects and then enter. And then see how the interior, what's intersecting kind of gets cut away. And now I can do the solid subtract, click the big item, space, then click the hole, space, and now it's got a hole in it. So there's the clamp body and the clamp head. All done up nice like. If we don't like it, we can just draw a cylinder or something, but it'll be fun enough. So we'll start with not a cylinder, but we're going to start with a nice part called a helix. So if you expand the draw section of the ribbon a little bit further, there's a helix tool. And a helix is just what is needed to represent threads. So that's how threads are made, right? On a helix, helical shape. Okay, so I'm going to draw a helix. Specify center point of base. Well, it just needs to be lined up with this, right? So I'm just going to click on it. Actually, I'm going to just hover over the center of the top and just, I'm going to draw it out above it a little bit. So it's just separated from it, okay? So, and then it has a diameter of 5/8, I believe. So, so that's 5/16, right? Well, anyway, D, 0.65. There it goes. And the top diameter, just hit space again, right? And so there it goes. And then I can specify the, how tall is this thing? 4 inches, huh? So specify Helix height. No, helix height, 4 inches, right? So 4, and there it goes. Oh, that doesn't look quite right. It looks more like a corkscrew than a thread. So I'm going to select it. Control 1 gets me to the number of turns. Where's that? Turns right there. There's 3 turns in this thing, but there's not really just 3 turns. How many turns do we have? Well, how do you know, right? Well, it does show that we have, do you see where it says the 5/8-11 UNC? Okay. Well, that means there are 11 threads per inch. Okay. So if I have 11 threads per inch and I have 4 inches, well, that's 44 turns, right? 4 times 11, so 44. And then that represents the number of threads that I'm going to see on this rod. Okay, well, okay, so we have 44 turns on this thing, so I can close that. And another thing I want to point out here is if I look at this thing, I can see where the helix starts And I can see that it's lined up with the x-axis, which is kind of what I want. Okay. So because it's lined up with the x-axis, I can, yeah, that's even easier to see if you can see where it begins right there. So I'm going to use my front view to build the rest of this thing. So there's the front view. I'm going to zoom in on that. And that's kind of where I want to build the shape of the actual thread, what's called the thread form. And it's really just an equilateral triangle. And we can know how big it is because if it's an equilateral triangle and there are 11 of them per inch, right? Then I can use my polygon tool, right? So POL, number of sides 3. And I don't want to use the center, I want to use the edge, right? So E space. And I'm just going to click a line and I'm going to type 1 divided by 11, right? That's the length of the edge. There. So there. So now I can move this thing right to the end of the helix. Right there. See that? Back to my front view. Zoom it in. That's not exactly the thread form that I want. In fact, it's actually, most threads have like the tip of the thread, like the crest of the thread is chamfered off a little bit. It's chamfered off by 1/8 of the pitch. So I'm going to draw a line. What's 1/8 of 11, right? 1/88, right? So I'm going to draw a line 1/88 of an inch. Vertically long, right there. I'm going to move it to the end point. I'm going to move it one more time to intersect. Straight across, intersect that right there. And then I'm going to trim that off. And delete that guy. I think that's it. So delete the helix. So that's going to be more like what the thread is going to show us. I do need to join these together, so I'll select both of them and join. So now I have this kind of chamfered off equilateral triangle. Is that all right so far? Pause. So we're going to use the sweep tool. So I'm going to select, I'm not even sure which to select. I think I can just select the triangle shape that's been joined together. So now it's a single polyline and it's in the right position. So it's a little bit less than 5/8 out there, right? As far as diameter goes. And under the extrude tool, there's a sweep tool, which creates a 3D solid surface by sweeping a 2D or 3D curve along a path. So now it says select sweep path, but I don't want to do that yet. I want to select the alignment. That's important for a thread. And what I don't want to do is align it, right? I just kind of want it to be straight along there. Okay, now I can pick on the path. And then it draws that shape through that helical shape, the path, I mean. So it's kind of hard to see, so let's go to conceptual and admire your work. Looks like a perfect thread, thank you very much. But it's hollow, it's not really, it's just the outside part of the thread. So I need a cylinder to kind of help me make it solid. I'm gonna just continue on or whatever on recording this so we can, you can look at this later in case you want to do it. Okay, back to wireframe, and I need a cylinder up through this, so I'm just going to build a cylinder, and not this way. So I'm going to reset my view so that the z-axis is vertically oriented. So a cylinder, I can snap to the center of this, but it's also oriented it's directly above the center of the other cylinder, so I can use that center as well. I'm not sure how big I want to make it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and make it 0.3125, which is too big, but we'll get there. And then I'll just punch it up through the rest of it, and it's going to be 4 inches, same height. Okay. Then I'm going to move it through the, well, in the front view probably is easier to see that. Now, one thing you got to watch out for is if it, but that actually should work because it won't move it in and out of the screen. The snaps will do that, but let's see how that works. So move, I'll go from quadrant, I'll move it straight up to the center and track over. So now that it should be aligned right to the top of the helix or the swept shape. Okay. Now, as far as the radius goes, with that selected, we could just measure out to the midpoint of the shape, or could just visually get it because I really just want it to the end point there. Since that's lined up, I should be able to just grab that corner and move it to the perpendicular to that, to the midpoint of the thread form, right? Okay, almost done, right? So in conceptual view, it's looking okay, except for everything else. So I'm going to union these together, and then we can chamfer the tops, the ends off. The chamfering can't happen with the chamfer tool the way this is because the edges aren't, it's not a cylindrical side to it. So show you how that's done. So union, yeah, let's go ahead and union the cylinder and the thread form. So now it's one single piece. When you're dealing with three-dimensional stuff in AutoCAD, it's a good idea to save often, right? So let's make sure we save our space here. So make sure we save it in the right place. Unit fixture clamp. There we go. Fixture clamp. Okay. Since the chamfer tool is not going to work, we have to build our own chamfer. A 45-degree angle chamfer on this thing ought to work okay. And I still see this edge right here. So I'm going to use this edge to build the chamfer. So, I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to start at the end point here and come in. And I could decide how much to chamfer it. There's no real indication on how much chamfer you could look it up. Oh, actually it does say. So it's a 300, so 0.03 inward. Okay, and so a 45-degree line off of that. So I'm just going to draw it outside, and then it doesn't matter what I do after that with it. So I'm going to track from the end point there, 45 degrees there, and close. So that shape right there is going to, I have to join it. I should have started with the polyline tool in the first place, I guess. But anyway, join it. So now I have this shape that I can use to cut the top and the bottom, for that matter. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom, but I'll just show you what I mean first. So before I can do that, it has to be a 3D shape, and this is where, oops, yeah, good to check that. So let's delete that and make sure. An even easier way is just to draw a polyline. So PL for polyline, and I'm going to draw a 45-degree line. Oh, I need to be in my front view. Okay, good. And I'll just draw the polyline out here. So polyline and 45 degrees, and then it doesn't matter, and I'll close it. Then I'll move this thing to the midpoint of it to the end of that line. So hopefully that's all lined up. So that's what I wanted. So then I'm going to revolve. So a revolve allows you to spin a shape around a center to create another shape. And so the center is right here, and I'm going to pick a vertical line for the center axis, and then 360 degrees being the default, just hit enter, and it builds this shape. So let me go to conceptual view for this, and I'll pause in a minute here. But anyway, it has this kind of beveled shape in here that I can subtract from the top of this thread, and it'll chamfer it off. So let's see how that works. Okay, now that I have this shape, I'm just going to draw it on the bottom as well. So I'm just going to show you how it works. So solid subtract. I select the threaded rod and then space, and then I click this chamfering object and space, and see how it chamfers it ever so nicely. Isn't that beautiful? Sort of, yeah, it's close enough. So I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. So back to wireframe, 2D wireframe, front view, zooming in. So here's the endpoint. Here's that horizontal line that I'm going to move my 45-degree triangle here. So polyline, 45 degrees. No, that's not 45. There's 45 degrees, and then just whatever, right? Close it. As long as that matches, okay. So I'm going to move it from its midpoint to the end point here. And that way it's lined up, and all I got to do is sweep this shape, or I said sweep, but I meant revolve. Sweep it around the center here. So here's the center, and vertically straight down, and that wraps around 360. Looks like that should work. I'm just going to keep it in wireframe, and I'm going to subtract object space, chamfering object space, and that trims off the excess on the bottom as well. Again, admire your work. That's this nice little chamfering edge. It missed some of that other stuff, but that should work fine. There we go. There's the rod, 4 inches tall, chamfered, threaded. There are your 3 pieces.